So now let's talk about how to make and how to press into your molds. I've actually made a couple of them already. That little half ball, right? Super simple. Flat bottom on there. Made a couple of them. Notice too that you see this right here. This is kind of has like a little bit of an oil base essentially in it. So be careful where you set it. Make sure you set it on something that's either non-absorbent or something that you can toss, okay? This is how that clay kind of comes to you. What you want to do is just grab a little chunk of it, and you see kind of how it cracks and whatnot. If you start just moving this stuff around into your hand here, everything will be good, right? And you'll start to see all those cracks kind of go away. So you want to kind of just give it a squeeze, really get in there, get everything going. And then you'll be able to press this into your mold. So I'm going to show you two different ways of doing it. You can do it solid like this, right? And if you're doing it solid, what you want to do is kind of just, get this thing. Think about like the shape of your piece here, right? And you take this and you really want to press down in hard and have more material than you really need. And you see how it goes over the edge here, okay? It's kind of hard to see because it's white on white, but I can also take this and kind of fold it over. This doesn't work the same as regular clay, like that other clay that we're doing. So if we're folding it over and getting air pockets in it or anything like that, it's not a big deal. It's not going to do anything, all right? Then what I like to do is use some sort of a scraper. You can use something even like a plastic scraper like this from Home Depot, or you could even use that wooden rib that you guys got in your loaner toolkit, okay? But basically what we want to do is we want to just kind of come here and start to remove some of that material, okay? And I like to start kind of from the middle to start to pull it away. If I pull from one side, it tends to scrape and pull the object up out of the mold. So we want to be careful of that. Now, see how it kind of did that right here? Kind of pulled it up. And that's not too bad because we've gotten most of it out. And all of it can be saved, all this stuff that's over here on the side, we can just kind of take that stuff and manipulate it, move it together, and create another chunk of clay that we can use. So we kind of get most of that off of there. And then what I like to do is kind of come here to the edge and kind of push a little bit and lift it up so I can see where that object is. And also I want that, a little bit of that material removed from the edge where it's going to come up. Because if it's just smeared onto it like this, it kind of helps hold it into the mold. All right, and so doing this is going to kind of help us to be able to remove it. All right. All these little crumbs we can get rid of. I'm going to push a little bit harder down in there just to kind of fix some of those things. All right, kind of smooth it out. It's going to be the bottom, so if it's a little bit rough, it's not a big deal because once it goes into the oven and we fire it essentially or bake it, the other thing that we can do is we can come back to it afterwards and we can sand it using a piece of sandpaper or something like that. Then what I like to do is take my needle tool, because this is kind of the hardest part of this whole process, is to get that item out of there. I take my needle tool and put it in at an angle like so, and then just kind of give it a little bit of a wiggle like so, and then it should pop right out. I didn't go all the way in, right, with that needle tool because I didn't want to poke in on the plaster. And there we go. We have our object. That's a solid one, okay? We can leave that edge like that, okay? The other thing that we can do is if we don't want it to be solid, we can take some of this clay. I'm just going to collect it here, bam. Kind of do the same thing. Kind of wiggle it or kind of mix it around here, just squeezing it. The other thing we can do is we can do this as a hollow piece. I think I need a little bit more. And this will just allow me to maybe make more of them if you want to make more, right? Because with that amount of Sculpey that I gave you, maybe you might only be able to get like 4 or 5 solid objects if you have kind of a bigger piece like I did with that ball. But remember, we want to work small, all right? We don't want to have big giant pieces that we're trying to make a mold of. makes it more difficult in the molding process, and then also you're going to run out of material. So I'm just kind of getting this to a thickness, and then I'm going to take this, I'm going to push it in, and I'm going to start squeezing it towards the outside. Now, in the baking process is super simple. I'll write it down in the instructions as well, but basically what it says on the package for Sculpey is that we put it in the oven at 275 degrees. You can put it on a piece of parchment paper if you want to. You can put it on a baking sheet. You can put it on any kind of a tray that can go into the oven. This is not going to damage any of your cooking pieces or cooking things. Utensils, cooking things. What's that? So now what I want to do is I want to come to it and kind of scrape again away to get it back to that spot. And this one may be a little bit more difficult to remove because we're not going to be able to really push too much into it with the needle tool, but we're just going to kind of work it again. Same thing, go over the edge here, kind of peel up that edge so it's not stuck too badly. We just want to make sure that we get that thing pressed down in there, right? And then we can kind of come back with our needle tool again and kind of get just on this little edge, right? Maybe we have to come in a couple of different spots because it'll kind of stick a little bit. But then once we release it like so, it'll come out. Now, I just really gently touch that because this is still very malleable. This stuff will not dry in the air. If you leave it out, you can leave it out for a very long period of time and it will not dry out. So I'm just handling that very carefully. And then there we go. We have the same kind of dome shape. And if I set it next to these other ones, it looks no different, right? The only difference is that this is a hollow one and these are solid. So we bake these at 275 degrees. We bake them for 15 minutes for every 1/4 of an inch. This is probably about a 1/2 inch thick, so I might have to bake this one for 30 minutes. But because I hollowed this one out, that's not quite a 1/4 of an inch, so 15 minutes is going to do it, right? And then we pull it out of the oven, let it cool down, and then you should have a hard object that you can paint and do what you wish with it, all right? So that's how we press the molds, press mold with this Sculpey clay. And this can be done with a lot of different materials as well. You could do this with slip cast clay as well, which one of the extra demonstrations that I added in your module goes over how to make a 1-part mold for slip casting clay. We're not going to be slip casting clay. We're going to be using this Sculpey that we can bake in our home ovens. But basic mold making process using plaster.